the magic moment when suddenly you realized it was painting?
I was just so lucky to be able to drop into, because I was just really blessed to be able to drop into painting, and painting is completely different
Mm-hmm.
than any of the others, because it's how do I describe it?
It comes from inside you, maybe, no? Or...
Well, how do I describe it? I can describe it. I would need a blank piece of paper. Here's how I describe it. I would have to describe it this way.
Mm-hmm.
If that was a blank piece of paper, that's how I describe it and why I believe it's going to be here forever. Because it's a blank piece of paper.
Right.
The medium starts with a blank piece of paper. There is no reflection.
Right.
I start
Right.
with a blank. There is absolutely no reflection. I start with nothing,
Mm-hmm.
like a writer would.
I have a couple of, I obviously looked at your website and, you know, all the paintings, and there's a couple that I liked. I like all of them, but there's a couple that I
course
like
you'd
more
say.
than other ones. Do you think you can, if I tell you the names, that you can, because then we'll show the image at the same time, just give me like a very short description of, well, of your interpretation of what it is that you made.
Sure.
First one is called Awakenings.
A lot of times my best paintings, like the painting you just described,
Yeah.
started when I stepped up to that painting, if I remember correctly, with some pink paint.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I turned my back to it and I threw pink paint behind my back. Because if I remember correctly, on that painting, I had a painter's block. Yeah, I think so. And I hadn't been able to paint for a few days. So I literally took paint and I threw it behind my back. And when you throw paint behind your back, you've got a mess. So then I stopped the block.
Sure.
And the minute I started painting, I was able to start painting.
Right.
Because that stops the block.
Right.
And immediately there's a creative force that gets going, and then I can move.
So it's
Something
all about
happens.
unleashing the creative force in a way.
Immediately.
Mm-hmm.
Immediately.
Mm-hmm.
And then one of two things happen. Either not two things happen. Immediately you start painting.
Yeah.
And something happens. Something happens, you get started in the paint.
Mm-hmm.
And in that particular case, a painting happened. Answer to your question, Albert, I can tell you how that painting started.
Mm-hmm.
You want to know how that painting started? Mm-hmm. It started the same way a painting started about 12 hours ago. If you want to know how that painting started,
yes.
You go to my Facebook site. Mm-hmm. And you watch the the post that I put on yesterday, because mm-hmm. that's how that painting started.
Right.
Yesterday, I had my friend, who's my framer, he happened to be in my studio. I was gessoing a 12-foot canvas. Mm-hmm. I wasn't going to be gessoing that 12-foot canvas, but he happened to be here because he showed up.
Right.
I was putting some gesso on that canvas. And he was here, and I said, hey, you know, you got the camera on. Would you mind just would you mind just taking a couple stills? And he says, yeah, no problem. And I said, well, while you're here, would you mind doing a Facebook Live post? Mm-hmm. And he said, yeah, no problem. And I said, well, while you're doing the Facebook Live, would you mind just hanging out for a minute? Well, while I was slapping some gesso on it, I just got carried away. And while I got carried away, I started throwing some paint on the canvas. Right. Well, while I was throwing some paint on the canvas, mm-hmm. I got carried away. Mm-hmm. And while I got carried away, I was throwing some really cool yellows and some reds. Mm-hmm. And while I was throwing some reds on there, some really cool stuff was happening. Sure. So in answer to your question about how awakenings happened, mm-hmm. that's how awakenings happened.
Right.
I can't answer the question any better than that. No, but if I would have kept going on that 12-foot canvas, mm-hmm. that international award-winning painting, Awakenings, mm-hmm. could have been this 12-foot painting mm-hmm. that if I would have kept going and would have been inspired,
Yeah.
could have been that tokenized painting.
Right.
Could have been a really brilliant painting, except I ran out of energy.
I saw the video of, which I thought was amazing, of when you made Canyonlands.
Oh, that was a great painting.
Yeah, it's
I could
amazing. But
story on that.
what I really, because at first I was looking at you doing it and I thought, he's just throwing paint on the canvas, but then there's all paint going on top and more paint on top and more paint on top. And then later when I saw it again, I saw that you had like a little white piece of paper with an idea, maybe like an outline. But
Yeah, that all went to hell in a minute.
well, but what I thought was really amazing, from the moment that you started, I could not see any concept or any idea of anything that was happening until the very end, when suddenly there was like a landscape of canyons. So is this something that's already forming in your mind while you're doing it, or how does?
Well,
how
I'll
does that
tell you
work?
the story on Canyonlands,
Because I'm
which
not
is, by the way, that's Canyonlands.
exactly.
Isn't it a beauty?
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah.
Well, Canyonlands came about as a result of Canyonlands was, these paintings look like a big mistakes when you're looking at them, but Canyonlands was a painting that, if you look at it on YouTube,
Well, we're looking at it now, so
like 20 minutes.
yeah,
Well, it looks like about 25 minutes
yeah.
of actual painting.
How
It took a
long
month.
A month.
Took a month of planning. It's $2,000 worth of paint.
Mhm.
Each one of those pours was about, I don't know, a quart, and then about a half a quart of paint.
Mhm.
Very, very expensive golden paint, which is the most expensive paint you can get. It's about a 15-foot, about an 18-foot canvas stretched on high tension lines across my old studio that I had. Quite a bit of planning went into that. Very, very high tension lines. I used two ladders across the back, two on the front,
Mhm.
and it was an aerobic exercise, to tell you the truth, which you'll see
Yeah,
if
'cause you were
you go to
leaning
the
over.
YouTube video.
Yeah.
A lot of running around.
Mhm.
And there was a rough outline. It was going to be like a New York skyline, really, but
Right.
really what it was going to be was kind of like a canyon, but
Mhm.
you have a rough idea. And really the rough idea is that when you everybody knows that if you put yellow and red together, you're going to get orange, right?
Right.
If you put two yellows and two reds, you're going to get two types of oranges,
Mhm.
but you don't know what kind of oranges.
Mhm.
If you put two types of yellows together with you're going to get, if you put two reds together and they're two viscosities, you don't know how they're going to blend together,
Mhm.
how what they're going to mix together. Nobody knows that.
Yeah. Right.
So that's the beauty of
Mhm.
how paints are going to blend.
Okay.
And-
So you're discovering it while you're doing it.
That's exactly right. And see, and when you pour water over them, you don't know how they're going to mix.
Mm.
And see, that's what I love about painting, all the different types of paint. I call myself a facilitator when I paint.
Mm.
I like to be there when I'm working with the paint.
Mhm.
I like to be able to be like I like happy accidents, but happy accidents don't happen unless I allow the accidents to happen.
Sure.
I'm there, I facilitate the movement of the paint,
Yeah.
but I'm
You don't
not a
enforce it.
micromanager.
Yeah.
I'm there to allow the paint to move.
Mhm. To take
I
on.
manage the paint.
To take on.
I don't
shape and life.
micromanage
Yeah.
paint. I'll allow it to move within, and you'll see that if you go to the YouTube video.
Mhm.
I'll manage it, I'll move it.
Yeah. You were moving
You
the
know
canvas,
that I'm
no?
there, but you saw that I'm there with the hairdryer. If I get just the right movement, I'll zap it like I've got a rifle on it.
Mhm.
Like I'll hit it just the right spot. But if I get a right movement, I'm there to manage the paint. And you also saw where I'll hit it with at a certain point. So I'm there. So it may look like a magnificent mess, but it's my magnificent mess.
Right.
And it's a 15-foot magnificent mess.
Yeah.
And then later I will go over this canvas, which turns out to be about a 13-foot magnificent mess. And then I'll go through it later. Again, it looks like, nothing, but I'll go through it later and I very rarely ever use a brush on any of my work. Almost everything I use are plaster knives. Almost everything I use is plaster knives, because when I'm using plaster knives, I can move fast. When I move fast, I allow paint to move fast.
Right.
That's what I love, is action, movement. Every paint I use is big and bold and fast and action.
Yeah.
That's what I like about my paint. But later, what you don't notice about my paint is I'll get in with very, very fine brushes and 5 or 6 or 10 different washes. Not washes, what's the word? Glazes. The old masters used to use glazes. And that's what brings up the magnet. And I'll show you later if I can come in, and I'll show you over here what gives this magnificence on the glow of some of this, which you don't see.
Yeah.
Like you'll throw in all of these, the washes, 3 or 4 that go over these.
Right.
But what you won't see that gives this glow over this paint is that I'll go in by hand brushes, 10 different, I'll go in 10 over these washes with brushes with these glazes. And that's what the masters used to use.
Right.
They'll go in 10 different washes over these with these glazes. And that's what, every time you go over these with the glazes, you're creating these like translucent glazes, which gives this glow.
Yeah.
It's like putting glazes over a cornea and you don't even notice it, but it's like glass.
Right.
And if you could see this in person, it just glows.
Yeah. So one of the things that you mentioned, Picasso, is Picasso one of your inspirations, or was it sort of coincidental, or?
Well, as far as artists, let's go back to that as far as artists and how I feel about.
Because I saw Madame and Flashback Freddy, if I'm not mistaken. It seemed to be very Picasso-esque. So
Let me just touch again on artists, okay?
sure.
I've been criticized by some of my fellow artists, which I don't give a damn about fellow artists, by the way. I've been criticized by gallerists and so on. And I don't give a shit about gallerists either, because, to be successful as an artist, you need to have your art be persistent in style.
Right.
Well, if you go to my website, my art is not persistent.
Yeah, there's lots of.
I don't care. I could care less,
Yeah.
because I like to do what I like to do. If I show up in the gallery in by the way, it's my gallery. So I don't give a damn about, I don't show another gallery. It's my gallery. So if I want to do this type of work, a 15-foot painting, it's my 15-foot painting.
What I found really interesting, because I don't know much about art at all, but when I saw your stuff, I thought he does like 10 different things.
That's exactly right.
That's what really struck me.
And I'll do another 10 different things
Yeah.
tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I thought was what defines you as an artist. So, I mean,
Well,
the,
what defines
the concept,
yeah, what
concept.
what defines me is I'm undefinable. And, and I know that will destroy.
Exactly.
Yeah. And, other gallerists says that's ridiculous, but, that's what defines me, though. I do have some central themes, though, is I'm generally speaking, I have very bold colors. I do use the same basic palette. You've got red, yellow, and blue.
Right.
But I use I use a variety of different colors, but they're very bold. And I do my own thing. I really do. I do my own thing. And I do like to try different things. I do like to try different techniques. And the other point I was trying to get at is I don't try to copy different artists. And that's why if you were to ask me, and I am criticized for this. People say, well, who are your favorite artists? Who do you are inspired by?
Yeah.
I couldn't even name a dozen artists because I
Sure.
don't study art.
Sure.
And I
No,
know
it-
that may be a real disadvantage,
Mhm.
but I don't study other artists.
Yeah. I get it. Like I said, I'm not an art expert, or I have a very superficial knowledge of art. But when I saw these two paintings, Madame and Flashback Freddy, I thought to myself, Picasso, because Picasso is from Barcelona, so there's a Picasso museum here, which I've seen. So there's really, and then there's one or two other ones where I thought, oh, it's Van Gogh, very because I'm Dutch and I happen to know that one as well. So
Well, Flashback Freddy, you asked about.
yes.
Okay, Flashback Freddy.
Mhm.
Flashback Freddy was one of the paintings that a gallery asked for interpretations of pinball. Okay,
Right.
so if you look at him, kind of lay him down a little bit, he's a pinball machine. You see him?
Right.
They asked for 3 pinball machines.
Right.
No, they asked for pinball interpretations.
Right.
I made 3 pinball machines.
Yes.
I challenged myself to come up with 3 different style. I have a friend of mine, John Henderson. He's a great guy.
Mhm.
He builds all my frames for me. I like doing stuff. By the way, another thing that's different about me, I don't work on pre-stretched canvases. I work on only raw canvas.
Mhm.
But I can't stand working on something that I have limitations. That's a very important part of my work.
Mhm.
I run out of ideas. If
Right,
I'm
right,
working on a canvas, I have to be able to work off canvas,
Stretch. Okay.
and I need to be able to make every part of the canvas work for me. That's very
Right.
important. So I have a friend of mine that, when I get the canvas exactly like it work, I call John and I say, hey, I need a 36.5 by 18.9. And he builds the canvas for me. We work together, we're a team.
Right.
So getting back to your question, I had a friend or gallerist say, hey, we're having a show. It's all things pinball. Can you come up with something? So I came up with 3 paintings,
Mhm.
one of which was Flashback Freddy.
Mhm.
Another was my interpretation of Donald Trump. More
Mhm.
than happy to show you that painting if you want
Yes.
to show it.
Yeah, sure.
Oh, I'll show you that one.
All right.
And another was one of my favorites. It's called Pinhead.
I
and
can't remember.
Well, it's on. Yeah, I'll show it to you. It's one of my favorites.
Sure.
Flashback Freddy, just as near and dear to me. And they're all different sizes. And I do the different sizes because I challenged John.
Okay.
And you'll see that Flashback Freddy's, I forget the way you describe the size, but it's an off size frame.
Mhm.
And I did that just so I say, okay, John, see what you can do with this.
Right. Okay. I got you.
Yeah, you can see the size.
Uh-huh.
But Flashback Freddy, I'll describe it verbally to you. It's kind of like, it's this old guy sitting in the back of an old pinball arcade.
Mhm.
And it's like this old guy that says to the new guys sitting in the front of the arcade, he's a beat up old frame.
Mhm.
And he's saying to the new guys that come into the back that says, hey guys, look at me. I may be all beat up around the edges. You see how he's got all the little paddles?
Right. Gotcha. Okay.
But I still got some life in me. I'm Flashback Freddy. And that's Flashback Freddy. And I love him because he's beat up around the edges, but he's got style.
Yes.
And if
yeah. That's
and
what I
if you
thought.
go and look at it's called Timeout Trump,
Mhm.
but he's got tiny little fingers he's got tiny little hands for his thing, and he's got little Tweety birds flying around.
Mhm.
He's got for his you'll see he's got a big Russian he's sitting on a big Russian thing, which is basically a phallic symbol sticking up his ass. And he's got little little ass things you'll see. You'll notice it. He's
Yeah.
my interpretation.
Yeah.
You'll see him.
All right. Be cool.
is my interpretation, because
Mhm.
that piece came out, they asked for my interpretation
Sure.
of pinball machines, and it came out in 2016, right after the election.
Mhm.
And it's my artist interpretation.
Mhm.
And then the other one is called Pinhead. And it's one of my favorite pieces.
Mhm.
And it's an interpretation of a pinball machine, of a guy basically playing pinball. And it's really one of my favorites. And it's a guy playing pinball, but it's him playing pinball, but he's looking at playing. I think you'll appreciate this one,
Mhm.
because you're a very intuitive guy.
Mhm.
But he's playing pinball, but he's looking at the machine, but you'll see that he's looking at it, but his mind is everywhere else.
Mhm.
You'll see it if you look at the piece. It's
All
called Pinhead. Again, it's an off-size piece too.
Mhm.
But the one with Trump, called Timeout Trump, you'll appreciate it. It's a 7-sided canvas.
Mhm.
I really challenged John with that one.
Yeah, that's very odd. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's very unique.
I have another one that I wanted to ask you about. One that really struck me. It's called the Road Less Traveled. That's like a
Oh,
really strange paint. That's like a really strange painting, to the point that I can't remember ever seeing anything quite like it. Actually,
now let me think. The Road Less Traveled.
the Road Less Traveled, yes, where you have the sort of like a green highway going through the
Oh, The Road Less Traveled.
yes.
Nobody comments on that one.
No.
Interesting.
Oh.
The Road Less Traveled. I like that. Yeah, very few people ever comment on that.
Hmm.
That is, it's a very abstract piece.
Yes.
Very few comment on that. It's one of my favorites. It's, excuse me for a minute.
Yeah, I'm gonna have some as well.
That's a piece that, it's just an abstract piece I did a while back.
Mhm.
You know, I'll make a statement about that, by the way. I don't think I even have it on my site, simply because it's one of those pieces that very few people like, because it's an abstract.
Yes.
I don't even have it on my site because
Mhm.
very few people like it. They
Yeah.
don't appreciate abstract art. It's one of my favorites though.
Mhm.
And it's basically just, if you look at the piece, it has very, very strong lines. It reminds me, where the piece comes from is that it's when I grew up in LA, Los Angeles,
Mhm.
and it has all these very, very strong freeways is what it is.
Yes, that's right.
And it's like all these freeway lines, but
Ah,
there's
okay.
this one beautiful green
Yes.
line
Exactly.
that goes through it.
Mhm.
And that to me is me riding my motorcycle
Oh.
as I was like flying out of Los Angeles
Right.
for the
okay.
last time.
So it actually depicts one particular event. Mhm.
Yes.
Cool.
When I was like a hippie in Los
Ah, nice.
Angeles.
Nice. Okay.
It's
Yeah,
like a
sort of
freedom.
it's
It's
sort
like a
of
freedom when I was like 16 and
Mhm.
in the 60s.
Mhm.
It's just a freedom that's called the Road Less Traveled.
Yes. Mhm.